Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to be working on this Shimano SLX M670 10-speed shifter. I've got quite a few projects to work on at the moment, and this one here has been sitting in my drawer now for a few months, and I've really wanted to work on it. It's a nice early morning day of vote in France. From what I can tell, when opening up the plastic cover at the back, you can remove the nut, which means we can normally work on this shifter. So compared to the older stuff that I've worked on, this shifter is a lot more solid compared to older Shimano shifters. The plastic though feels a bit cheaper, a bit more like kids' toys today compared to the older stuff. So let's begin. So let's begin by removing the screw here on the back. It's a Phillips. Now you'll notice right here that the nut is protected by some bent parts of metal, which we're going to need to bend back to be able to turn this around. So I'm just using anything flat-headed object to be able to get behind them and pry them back. And what's crazy here is the nut, unlike other shifters, can be removed just like a regular nut on a bolt, so anti-clockwise, and there's nothing on here that's particular that's going to destroy the nut, unlike other shifters as well. Very odd for Shimano to just suddenly change that on this shifter. Oh, by the way, I completely forgot to say this. The make sure on your shifter, in fact I've already started undoing it now. Before you start working on this, make sure that you remove all the tension on the spring. So here there's a this top plate. Behind that there seems to be a fin washer. For reference, one tip of that spring is inside this hole right here on the lever, and it's stopped here on this part. I can't quite tell where the other side of the spring is located. Let's remove the first lever. I'm very interested to see where the other end of the return spring underneath this is located. No, I didn't see it. And now we can take off this return spring. Here you have a washer and a bushing. Looks like we can take off this part. Another fin spacer. Can't get it off. We're going to take off the rest of the plastic cover using a Phillips screwdriver. Take off all the screws. And you can now take this off. It's clipped in certain corners. Right here you have a tiny little circlip that we're going to take off. We now should be able to lift this up. We've got one pull here with a spring. We're going to take that off. Okay, take off that spring. A lot more sturdy spring. Can we lift that up? Yeah. Let's remove this sprocket. I think it should be okay now to work on. Oh, something definitely went flying off. So there's a cam here. So I'm trying to gently remove. Okay, so the top part of the spring is obvious. It's a slit, and there was a bushing that just fell out that was running through it. And underneath here, okay, the other tip of that spring was located right there. You've got a plate. And finally, there's this part here, which I presume is for the dial. It was in this position when I'm taking it off. There seems to be a little tip here sticking out. And finally, there's a bushing here. There's a small pull here to remove. So take off that clip. Can now lift up the pull itself and the spring. Okay, that last part looked quite scary to put back together again. I'm sure we will figure it out though. So I'm going to be cleaning all the parts, and then I'm going to put some grease. This grease that Shimano seems to be using is fairly sticky. I'm not too sure what it is. It must be something like their white grease that they sell. Right, everything's been cleaned now. Grab a pair of gloves, and I'm going to use some Teflon grease for the parts, notably on the parts that have friction and the pivoting parts. So let's begin on that. First thing we're going to do is put this mount back in place, and you're going to need to use something as a spacing for the screw that goes inside here. I'm using a nut. It is going to make life a lot easier without this moving up and down. Obviously we're going to put a cover back on later, and you won't need that nut anymore. So I'm going to be tying this down until it's nice and fairly secure anyway. Grab this part and the spring, so the little slit, the spring tip that sticks out like this, you want to put that into the slit of the cam and push that all the way down. Now installing the spring and the cam back in place into the actual pod of the shifter is pretty complicated. I managed to figure out a way of doing it though. You want a number 4 Allen key wrench, or anything actually that fits really nice and tightly on this bushing that I'm about to put in. So now take that bushing, the longer one, there's 2 of them, one shorter. Put that onto the Allen key. Grab the cam, and on the side facing this way, that's where the spring is, you want to push that bushing through the cam. Okay, so eventually this plate here, that pivot, is going to be going down like this. However, we need to have that tip of that spring that's right there to be latched onto this part here, and for that to do that we need to do a little trick thing. So what we're going to do is that tip of that spring is going to go into here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to twist it, and you really want this spring to stay in place when you're doing it. You don't want it to overlap. It's quite annoying to actually do that though. Eventually you're going to get it, so it'd be like this, and then run the Allen key or whatever object you've chosen to kind of hold it in place and help you hold it in place. So now I can kind of let go for now, keeping it as flat as possible. Next on here is the smaller bushing, stick down the top, and then we're going to have this other cam part. So you'll see there's a tip right here that's sticking out, and that's going to go into the hole right there. So aim for that and make sure to keep everything flat. I did have to try it 1 or 2 times before this all kind of worked out. Okay, so mine's gone through. I just did it 1 more time to really get it laid flat, and you can see here now the spring is not overlapping at all. Now for the next part. Now with the mount, you're going to put the bolt through onto the other side, and what we're essentially going to be doing is pushing this bolt through and pushing the Allen key out, and you want to have everything aiming into the right position. So let's try and do that. And push that all the way down. Now there's a bushing at the back there that you need to kind of push in between the gaps here. So you'll need to nudge that about a bit. That feels flat. That feels all good. Right, well that's the hard part. We've done it. You can check that you've done that correctly by turning the cam manually, and you'll see at the rear cam at the back, which is going to be essentially where the other end or the tip, if you have a dial, it's going to go into that hole. Mine doesn't have one, so I can't test that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it's going to function.